Neoliberalism is a doctrine that has dominated our lives for the past 45 years, but astonishingly, most people either have never heard the term or they've heard it and they don't really know what it is. Some people think it's the same as the old laissez-faire capitalism that predominated in the 19th century, but it's really very different. And the big difference is that neoliberalism was developed after most adults had the vote. And it was the means that capital used to try to defeat its greatest foe, which is democracy. And the problem with democracy from the point of view of capital is that people, well, they want to share for themselves and they don't want to be exploited and they don't want to be trampled and they don't want to be poisoned and polluted. They don't want their lives ruined by the predations of capital. So they call for capital to be restrained. They call for regulation, they call for taxation, they call for a greater share of the value which they generate as workers. And that is anathema to capital. And capital is always trying to solve that problem. Neoliberalism is one of the means of solving it. And what it does is to mobilize the state to get those obstacles out of the way, to shut down trade unions, to shut down protest movements, to shut down progressive taxation, to sweep away the regulations that constrain the activities of corporations and oligarchs, and create a politics which is much more conducive to capital than democracy is. And that's a politics which is basically oligarchical. It's a politics which is controlled by rich people. And this doctrine, which has been variously called Thatcherism or Reaganism or free market economics or monetarism or supply-side economics, all of which are actually misleading terms. This doctrine of neoliberalism, since Margaret Thatcher came to power in 1979, has reigned more or less unchallenged in the United Kingdom. It has been a way of effectively changing not just politics and economics, but, as Thatcher herself said, the heart and the soul, to the extent that we're all neoliberals now. And it has resisted all changes of government. Even when Labour gets in, it's still a fundamentally neoliberal settlement with just a few little tweaks, a few little modifications to make it slightly less vicious than it is when the Tories are in power. And what we need first is to identify this doctrine, to see what it is, to know what it is, to understand why it is that our lives are not so much better than they could be. We could be having so much better distribution of wealth, prosperity, well-being, environmental protection, and it's not happening because of this thing called neoliberalism. But then we need to see how to overthrow it and to get the lives we could be leading. And this is what I try to do in our book, The Invisible Doctrine.